Ladies and gentlemen, it is the 1st of December 2010. It is colder than Rura Pente outside, and this is the latest build on Tribble. And we start with horrible, horrible news. A giant pink Tribble had indeed rampaged through Earth's space dock during the last downtime, and it's eaten most of the vendors. Yes, folks, Cryptic have consolidated the Starship and personal badge vendors, and they're now just one vendor. So you get one chap, Lieutenant Commander Offlim, for the Starship parts, so you can get all manner of torpedoes, consoles, beams and other goodies from him. The range on selection hasn't changed, and as far as I can tell the prices haven't either. And there is a corresponding vendor in the central hub. We will see her later. The new doors continue to spread, although they perhaps ought to take out the old door frames. Yeah, it's a nice change. It no longer looks as though somehow we were shrunk down to 3 feet tall, or that the starbase was built for giants. Yes, indeed, folks. You heard it here first, Starbase Nephilim. Anyway, the Admiral's office, again, it's got the new doors. There's an interesting little point here on the map. If I bring this up, you can see that there's an area behind it here that looks as though it ought to connect through this door, but it doesn't. I have no idea if this is something they plan to bring up in a future patch, or if it's just something that hasn't made the cut yet, but don't be surprised if Admiral Quinn's office turns into part of the main Earth space dock rather than being a little subzone. To be honest, it's a change that I would consider overdue. Another change I'd like to see is just putting signs on these turbolift doors. It's still a bit of a guessing game as to where you're going at times. Now, yes, those 3 crewmen did just beam in and carry on their conversation. Starfleet enlisted personnel these days, won't walk anywhere. So the central hub's relatively unchanged, except that yes, we did indeed have a giant Tribble rampage in here as well. There is one personal equipment vendor now. She handles everything, kits, shields, armour, weapons, you name it. Overall, I'm in favour of this change because I wasted more time than I care to recall running around all, 8, 9 vendors in this hub? Just crowded the place up. The only downside I can see is that it's going to potentially lead to vendors being zerged in high traffic areas or high population times, but that's not really been an issue with the Mark 11 vendors, so meh, I can live with it. Anyway, onto Memory Alpha, where R&D has had something of an overhaul. I don't know if anybody actually bothered with it very much prior to a quick glance at it when they were levelling up, but I know I didn't. Anyway, the basic concept has not changed all that much. It is still take ingredients, put ingredients into magic box, push button, remove product from magic box. Which works, but I can't help but note that Ultima Online, back in 1999, so that is what, 11 years ago, almost 12 years ago now, had a more detailed system, had quality levels, had random outcomes influenced by skill factors, and this doesn't. So mechanically, it's no different to the current system, and I would still be inclined to ding it a little for that. However, at least it's no longer completely irrelevant to the high-end game, because as you can see, you get some very, very juicy equipment. Mark 11 phaser cannon, Mark 11 torpedoes, Mark 11 shields, Cap X2. Oh, that is so very, very tempting. Believe me, folks, if you aren't already stocking up parts on holodeck, now would be an excellent time to start. Because, oh yeah. Now, this is an interesting point. There's no error message here. There really ought to be something telling me, no, sorry, you haven't got the skills in Advanced Energy Field R&D, so no shiny toy for you yet. but there isn't, so perhaps that needs to be added. In some respects, I suppose it's reassuring that we're 8 days from the projected release date now, and I'm reduced to making little niggles like this, the subject of videos. We're no longer at the stage where we were at the beginning of this particular round of Tribble, where I was looking at stuff and just thinking, oh god, this is game breaking, this is unplayable, this is unpublishable. Fortunately, where I have had cause to make that criticism, Cryptic have listened, maybe not to me, but they've certainly listened, and they have fixed it. That particular instance will be the subject of another video. CapX2 Disruptive Resistance. Oh, that's going to be so popular in PvP, isn't it? How many Klingons have gone back to using disruptors to save on skill points these days? Oh boy, that could be fun. So overall, it's not a bad series of tweaks. It does at least make it relevant to the game as it currently stands in the wider context. That said, I would like to see it expanded still further, probably with the addition of a mini-game that gives you better rewards if you succeed or more experience, and blows the lab up if you fail. After all, how many times did a lab accident kick off the plot in Star Trek? Hell, didn't Wesley Crusher once blow up an entire universe? Anyway, little bug here in the R&D quest, in that the R&D experience icon still needs to be added. I have no idea if the assets for this have been done and just need to be plugged into the game, or if it's still buried somewhere on one of the artist's to-do list. We shall see. They've got 8 days at time of recording. I have no idea how this guy got a Starfleet uniform. The last I saw of him, he was engaged in a 3-way finger-pointing exercise with his brothers, and he blew up the lab. Like I say, clearly we ought to have that minigame. Yes indeed. Maybe some sort of pattern matching? I don't know, maybe something to think about later on. She is not to Pren, just another random Vulcan, probably a foundry hook if we ever need one. This is to Pren. And she hands out 2 tasks. The first is to practice the waveform minigame that we're also familiar with from scanning anomalies out in the field. And the second is just to go and scan some things yourself. Now, I would have had these the other way round because it's the other way round out in the field. You scan the anomaly, then you match the waveform. However, I'm not entirely sure it matters that much. It's more a niggle than anything else. Second part of the quest is obviously just to scan the items dotted around the room, as she has said. Now, there is one thing I would change here. You can see we've got the big red scan here icon that we're also familiar with, but most of the items, these 2 in particular, are using generic box models. I would have those changed to the 3D models that correspond in the real world. So, be it the gas clouds or the little asteroids or the technological artifacts. Anyway, this is the power cell. Yes, I know it looks like a first aid kit. How would I know? They called it obsolete. Maybe that's how Starfleet designed them back in the day. Toddle over to the general R&D crafting station. It is marked on the map. And for those of you who are wondering why I can't fabricate this, it's because my inventory is full, as I will very shortly discover. There we go. Throw away a Tribble, and it lets me upgrade it. So, at this point, it would have been nice to just be able to hand it into Commander Remain, but instead we have to go all the way back to Pren and turn it in here. So, that is that. That's pretty much it for the meat of the memory alpha changes. Overall, I'm really quite happy with them. Memory alpha is once again relevant to the end game. And whilst I would see, or like to see, a more detailed crafting system designed and implemented, realistically that is going to be months away. I mean, just redesigning a suitable minigame will take weeks. Anyway, I will see you next time.